Requiem, The Grim Harvest was a box set released in 1996 for levels 6 to 10. Written by Lisa Smedman and William Connors, with interior art by Val Myrick, Andrew Goldhawk, and Paul Carrick, with a cover by Fred Fields. It is the third and final part of the Grim Harvest series where Aslan tries to escape the realm of Ravenloft. It comes with 3 source books and a full-size poster map, and it is set in the domain of Darkon. The story has the heroes arrive in the capital city of Darkon, Il-Aluk, where they meet a Vistani named Nichia. She tells the heroes that she had a vision of the death of the city and everyone in it. She tells the heroes they must enter the Grim Fastness, a prison compound, and stop the ritual being performed by Aslan. The heroes enter and discover that the Karragat and the Eternal Order are working together, and death is there as well. Aslan has constructed the Doomsday device, based off the Infernal Machine. Aslan plans to enter the Doomsday device and activate it, and it will turn him into a demi-lich, and then he will be able to escape Ravenloft. The heroes arrive just in time and have a big fight with Death and the others while Aslan activates the device. The device causes an explosion of negative energy that kills everyone in the city, including the heroes, and even Aslan himself. This part of the Avenger is a dungeon crawl, for the most part. The heroes awaken as undead creatures. Everyone in the city is now an undead creature controlled by Death. No living thing can enter the city, and if they do, they are instantly killed and become an undead creature controlled by Death. The city is now renamed Necropolis, and forever will be, with Death as its Dark Lord. Death cannot leave the city. The rest of the adventure is a sandbox in the city with the heroes trying to escape. The heroes will have to adjust to being undead creatures and gather clues that if they escape the city, they will be able to be transformed back into their living selves through a magical item Nichia had. Death will try and prevent the heroes from escaping, and the end will have a big climax with a final battle against Death. Though they cannot kill him, they will be able to escape. The sourcebook Death Triumphant is the adventure part of this box set. The sourcebook Necropolis detailed the changes to the domain of Darkon after the Grim Harvest. Il-Aluk has become Necropolis, the city of the dead, with Death as its Dark Lord. No living can survive in the city, and anyone who enters dies and becomes undead under the control of Death. The rest of Darkon has been divided into territories ruled by powerful creatures, but they are not Dark Lords. They just happen to be the most powerful person there, and they really have no idea what to do with Aslan gone. The Boglands is ruled by Glennis McFadden, a green hag. The Forest of Shadows is ruled by Golf Cloggin, a were-rat. The Jagged Coast is ruled by Damon Skag, a ghoul lord. The Mistlands are ruled by Trillin, a ghost. The Mountains of Misery is ruled by Beryl Silvertress, a dwarf vampire. The Vale of Tears is ruled by Yakko, a Vassalinch. They are not political rulers per se, and most people have no idea who they are, but behind the scenes they are important. The book also describes changes in the land and weird phenomena taking place all over the domain. The major cities are in disarray as well, with the absence of Aslan, and people are scared and restless, worried about the Grim Harvest and worried it can happen again. And the domain and the people of the domain start to turn on the Eternal Order, thinking they failed to protect them. The book Requiem gives the rules on how to play undead creatures. The rules are really thorough, going over how to generate ability scores, proficiency, multi-class characters, races, alignment, appearance, death, special abilities, and returning to life. Characters can become skeletons, zombies, ghouls, ghast, waits, mummies, vampires, lynches, wraiths, specters, shadows, and ghosts. The problem is that most of the better undead require a certain ability score requirement. Some of them require 2 or 3 ability score requirements. And if they're not met, then the heroes will have no choice but to be lowly undead like skeletons or zombies when they really want to be either vampires, lynches, or mummies. The adventure itself is pretty good, the first half being a dungeon crawl, witnessing the historic event of the Grim Harvest. The second half is a sandbox, and the players get to play as undead creatures. Death is again a powerful villain and will push the heroes to the limit. Players will remember being an undead character for a brief period of time, whether they were a lame undead or a cool one. The Necropolis book does a fantastic job of detailing the domain itself and all the changes to it. Some of the changes are very interesting, and the political vacuum left by Aislin's death makes for some great ideas. Most of the new lords are okay, but some are just meh. And the city of Necropolis itself is done up pretty good as well. It should be noted, however, at this time the whole domain would be changed to Necropolis. But in a little while later, a few products later actually, the name of Darkon would come back to and be called the domain, and while the city would just be called Necropolis. The Grim Harvest series as a whole can be a little disappointing. It did not sit well with fans and was not as well received as the Grand Conjunction was. It had only 3 adventures, although it was rumored that they were going to have 4. One of them just got cut. And though they got better as they went along, they could have been a whole lot better. The city of Necropolis and death as the Dark Lord of the city is a good idea, but the loss of Aislinn was not. Aislinn is one of the best Dark Lords of Ravenloft, and his constant rebellion against dark powers make for epic stories, and he moves things along. Aislinn would eventually return in a sequel to the Grim Harvest series that was never published, but it would be about 4 years before his official canon return. The ability to play as undead monsters was a type of fan service, but the reality is that one could not keep an undead character for long, so what was the point? The Grim Harvest is no Grand Conjunction, and eventually the only lasting thing from this event is death and the city of Necropolis. However, I do think the Grim Harvest is an epic event for all its shortcomings and very worthwhile for players. I do recommend this box set as it is part of Ravenloft history, and your players will not forget it. Now, however, if we are looking at facts and talking about this series as a whole in reality time, then we have to look at things. The Death Unchained module was not well received, although, like I said before, the other 2 would get better. The change of the name of Darkon to Necropolis as the domain was not well received, and in fact would be changed later back to Darkon, with the city only being called Necropolis. Death has kind of always been considered a poor man's Aislinn, although I don't really think that. I think Death is pretty unique and pretty awesome in his own right. The getting rid of Aislinn for a while was really not a good idea. The whole point of the series seemed like for player characters to be able to play as undead. However, like I said, you can't play as undead for long. You would eventually lose your character. And this idea would be abandoned just a few years later and completely ignored, as a matter of fact, and especially when 3rd edition came along. So the Grim Harvest series, what was the point? I will, however, say that there was a sequel plan that would have made this series a lot better. It would make it more epic, especially if you were using the same player characters. And that is the Return of Aislinn. Now, I will go over a review of that adventure, but just to let you know, the adventure was planned to be published, and it was about 90% done. But when Wizards of the Coast decided to go to 3rd edition, the adventure was scrapped. William Connors wrote the adventure, and he turned in everything that he had, but he also published the adventure online. And the adventure, although it will need a lot of work from a DM, is actually pretty good and elevates the series really well. So all in all, I think the Grim Harvest series is actually a decent series. It's nowhere near as good as the Grand Conjunction, and is nowhere near as good as the 3rd big epic event, the Time of Unparalleled Darkness, which had the seeds planted for it just before 2nd edition ended, and during 3rd edition, which we would have seen had Wizards of the Coast not canceled Ravenloft. So I do recommend this series. I think it is worth getting, but don't expect greatness like the Grand Conjunction. At midnight, everyone will die. Aislinn the Lynch Lord is launching another diabolical plan. He has allied himself with the entity known as Death, and together they plan to raise the domain of Darkon. From the ashes of a once mighty land will now rise a new domain, Necropolis, the land of the dead. For the citizens of Darkon, death has been an everyday companion, and sometimes a yearn for into the suffering. However, now the cold comfort of the grave is forever denied these good men and women, as they find themselves walking the land after their breath has left them. Heroes have always considered the undead to be mere monsters, legions of mindless evil to be slain with no second thought. Now the heroes will learn the agony of actually being one of the living dead. They become the monsters, and the entire world becomes their enemy. This box set contains everything necessary to take your characters beyond death's veil and into the shadowy world of unlife, including Requiem, a 96-page of rules for the generation and play of undead player characters, as well as tips for dungeon masters. This book details 12 different types of creatures that characters can become after death, as well as dozens of powers and weaknesses they may possess. Necropolis. 32 pages covering the new domain of Necropolis. Although little has changed physically in the former domain of Darkon, the people, animals, plants, and even the land itself have been infused with the power of the new demi-lord Death. Death Triumphant. A 64-page adventure that puts the heroes in the middle of Lord Aislin's ultimate scheme to escape from Ravenloft. Death Triumphant can be played as a standalone adventure or as the final chapter in the Grim Harvest series. Poster map. One two-sided full-color map detailing the headquarters of Aislin's secret police and the new domain of Necropolis. For 3 to 6 characters for levels 6 to 10.